Hello, my name's David. I'm an environment artist, and today we are back in Crimson Desert. It's all Crimson Desert lately, isn't it? And why not? I've certainly got the bug. I'm absolutely loving it. I'm really enjoying it. It's a feast, isn't it? It's a real feast. Oh my God, look at that. I'm it's right up my street. It's almost my perfect game. Really is. So we're going to have a look today at materials, and specifically we're going to have a look at the kind of displacement stuff, all that chunky stuff on the walls and things. And because I've been examining it intensely, and I was unable to really pin down exactly what was being used because Pearl Abyss have been a little bit wishy-washy and vague, and there's been conflicting things. I was watching stuff from Digital Foundry, and they were talking about POMs initially, and now they're talking about displacement mapping. I initially concluded displacement mapping, but then I started second guessing myself, and then there's been some more information coming out, and so I wanted to go through my analytical journey, if you will, in pinning down what I think is going on. And so I'll caveat that with saying that, I'm not a tech artist and I'm not a graphics programmer, but, you don't spend years and years as an environment artist without, so picking up a few things here and there. So I think I've got a pretty informed view, and I think I know what's going on. If you are a tech artist or a graphics programmer, feel free to correct me. I'm always happy for more information. So we're going to have a look at some walls over here. And, look how lovely they are. But before we get into it proper... Oh, pardon me, sir. Sorry about that. Sorry that you walked into me there. Did he just pickpocket me? Oh, he pickpocketed me, didn't he? Oh, if I wasn't with you going through these walls, I'd be after that guy. I'm going to keep an eye on him. But anyway, what was I saying? Yes, before we get into it proper... My customary thanks to channel members. Thank you very much. Had a few more join lately, a little flurry, and greatly appreciated. Thank you so much. It's a really nice feeling having you on board and supporting the channel and me in my endeavours. And I should say, actually, an extra special thanks to Luke, who was very generous and tipped me £18 on Ko-Fi. So thank you, Luke. That's really kind of you. Yeah, thanks very much. Man, you didn't have to do that, but it's really appreciated. Thanks. So, be warned. This is not a gameplay video. We're not playing the game. And if you are one of those people that are like, stop looking at stuff and play the game, this isn't for you, this video. Right? I'm precisely not playing the game in most of my videos. I'm doing that in my own time because I'm really enjoying it. But I'm not playing it. I'm looking at all the stuff. Yes. Oh, my word. There's so much to look at, isn't there? So, yeah, we're going to be looking at mainly the walls and rocks, I suppose. The cobblestones are great, but it's just easier to analyze the walls. Just because we can get the camera into better positions than we can on the floor generally, and the walls being vertical lend themselves a bit easier to analysis of this sort. They're just great, aren't they? They're really chunky. They really stand out as having a lot of depth to them. So in my initial video, if you watched that, I concluded it was displacement mapping for various reasons, which we'll go into, right? So initially, it was all like, oh, POMs, isn't it? POMs everywhere. Look at the POMs and all that lot. All the chunky parallax occlusion maps going on, giving that depth to all the surfaces, that chunkiness. And, it does exhibit some of the sort of foibles about parallax shaders. In that if you go right up to it, at a grazing angle to the polygon face, you start to see some funky stuff going on. Lots of games can exhibit this. It's just that most games fade the parallax effect out the shallower the angle you get to the face. So as the camera angle to the face gets smaller and smaller, then you'll see that the face would go flatter and that 3D effect would disappear. They don't seem to be doing any of that, which is why it exhibits some kind of weird screen edge stuff, right? So we will get into why that happens and how it relates to other techniques and stuff. So if I just pop up a diagram that I've knocked up about parallax shaders, right? So if you look at that, this is like a texture seen edge on. So you're looking at a cross section, and you know it's exaggerated massively, of course. So the green is your height map, a cross section of it. So that's all the bumpiness. So if you look at the top, the eye, you're looking at the surface, more or less what I'm doing with the camera here. You know, perfect angle. It's great because the UV offsetting that the shader is doing is fairly small to get the parallax effect, that 3D effect of sampling through the height map. And so works great. But if you look at the lower section of the diagram, when your eye gets really low, so the vector from the camera to the face is getting smaller and smaller, right? Closer and closer to parallel. And if you look at the UV offset, it's getting bigger and bigger because you're at that grazing angle and you're sort of skimming across the height map. And so the points that it's sampling get bigger and bigger. And if you were to get parallel to the face, your UV offset is effectively infinite, and then it all breaks. You know, and the closer you get to infinite, and it's like an asymptote as the graph gets steeper and steeper and steeper and steeper, and it just breaks more and more and it falls apart. And so that is why parallax shaders break at steep angles, and that's why you usually fade them out. And so relating to Crimson Dawn, we're not using parallax shaders, I don't think, or if we are, we're using a sort of modified parallax shader that's using pixel depth offset. And what's a good example of this? Right, let's find a silhouette, something in sunlight here that we can have a good look at. There we go. Perfect example here. So traditional parallax can't do silhouettes because they can only operate within the bounds of the geometry. So you can do pixel depth offsetting, which is a sort of evolution of the parallax shader. So what you're basically doing is you're operating on the pixels, not the geometry. So pixel depth offset, it offsets the depth of the pixel, and so it can push stuff in to create what would look like a silhouette. So it could be that. So I was thinking, if it's not standard parallax shaders, it could be parallax shaders using pixel depth offset, which could give you silhouettes. And parallax shaders exhibit this kind of distortion when the view vector gets more and more toward parallel to the surface that you're looking at. So, you know, check that out. And even, you know, when you get right to the edge of the screen, check that out. That looks more and more like the polygon boundaries, you know, the boundaries of that geometry. And as you move out there, you see that depth comes into play. And if I pop on, it's going to pop on reshade. Found a panda instead. This is my son's panda. Hello. Let's put you over there, out of the way of my keyboard. Let's get reshade on. So reshade is another thing that is interesting to use in this case, because parallax shaders don't usually appear in the depth buffer, which is what we're looking at here is the depth buffer. It's reconstructing a world normal from an edge detect ran on the depth buffer. So yes, looks like the world normal, but we're really looking at the depth buffer here, and it's quite a convenient view. It shows off the topology admirably, and I find it super useful for this sort of analysis. But yeah, parallax doesn't usually appear in the depth buffer. You know, it comes after that stage in the pipeline. But if you're doing pixel depth offset, and it finds its way into the depth buffer. So, you know, if it is pixel depth offset, yeah, it could be, because, you know, it's showing up in the depth buffer here. And, you know, you can see all that lovely distortion that's happening on the edge there. Yes. So that was what I thought then. I'd come to that conclusion. I was like, okay, what we've got here is parallax with pixel depth offset. Woo! Mystery solved. But what I noticed in the latest patch that I've got now is patch 1.01. Pearl Abyss mention displacement mapping here. So I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, they're a bit vague. They don't say, like, you know, how much are you using displacement mapping? Is that the main thing? Are you using it just on a few assets? Or is everything we're seeing here displacement mapping? Interesting, isn't it? And what I think my original assumption of displacement mapping is correct. I think what we're seeing here is displacement mapping, which is kind of like pixel depth offsetting, but instead of offsetting pixels, this is operating at the vertex level. So it literally looks at the height map and it offsets the vertices based on a sample of the height map. So, you know, it's very similar process, just operating on vertices. So if you're using displacement mapping, what that relies heavily on is the vertices, your vertex count in your geometry, because you can't display vertices that you don't have, do you? And displacement mapping works best if you've got some kind of adaptive subdivision going on. Tessellation, adaptive tessellation is great for displacement mapping, because the closer you get to your geometry, you're getting more and more vertices, and so as you're looking around, you've got more vertices to push and pull from the height map, so it's going to look good. And what I think we're seeing with this stretching and artifacting here is that as you get closer up and as you move the camera like that, you're kind of getting closer to the face, and it's trying to displace geometry that doesn't have enough vertices to do it. And so it's kind of breaking down and it's warping. Don't get me wrong, I'm not nitpicking here. What I'm doing is I'm using this artifacting as a kind of means to identify what the technology is doing, you know, what's being applied here. And, you know, these things are a bit of a gift for analysis because it lets you know a little bit about what might be happening. And so I'd love to, you know, hear a definitive answer from Pearl Abyss. That'd be great. So let's move around here. And I want to go and have a look at another area which can sort of, you know, show us these things in a slightly different way. So here we are at Shipwreck Shore, which had a little journey all the way east here to the coast. And rather impressive sort of landscape bit here. It was really cool. I just thought I'd head off and have a little wander around and have let's see what's there, and head off to see the sea, as it were. So let's have a mooch over here. Excellent. Lots of awesome stuff over here. There we go. We're not looking at the waves, not yet. That's for a future video. So then you go, Cliff. We'll just have a little walk and oh man, yeah. I mean, I haven't got a lot to say about the sea. I think it's great. It's really nice. There's a lot of stuff that's really interesting about those waves, but this is not about the waves. But wow. Oh, I want to talk about them. But no, let's just move on to what I was gonna just illustrate. I thought these rocks here are quite good at sort of illustrating some of the things I've been looking at. So let's just pop reshade on, and you know, it makes it very easy for you to see the polygon faces here, doesn't it? You know, the basic makeup of the rocks here. And yeah, sure, those faces, they could be, or probably are, subdivided more. You know, ReShade can't run an edge detect on a flat polygon, so it can't see internal polygons that are lying on a planar surface. So, you know, yeah, you know, who knows? There's probably more going on than what shows here. But let's just get up to one of these walls here, And you know, it's kind of, you get a different view when you're looking at this stuff from the sort of stone walls of the towns and stuff. So you know, you can clearly see the sort of major edges going on, and we get this kind of interesting detail, don't we? You know, when you go into textured mode, it's all softened and you know it works. And when you look at this, you know, obviously it doesn't work quite as well, but it gives you a bit more information about it. So, you know, let's have a look at this distortion. You can see there, as it flattens down as the view angle gets more and more shallow and more toward parallel. Let's have a look over here. I think there's probably something that's a bit more conducive to what I'm wanting here. Whoa. Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? This sort of offsetting that we're getting. So check out the edges there. It just flattens down, doesn't it? And I think what we're seeing there is it's just breaking down because it's not got the vertices to support the displacement. So just check it out there. You know, there's this sort of collapsing inward, isn't there? As you look round at it. And I think, yeah, it's just a cleaner way to observe it, I think, than the town walls. But, you know, you can see it at the bottom of the screen as well. You know, this thing, it does exhibit at screen edges, you know, top as well. There, you see that distortion. It's just that I find it a bit easier to look at it when it's at the edge of the screen. Yeah, you see it there. So, interesting. I've not got the definitive answer. Pearl Abyss do, obviously, but they're not saying this yet. And what we do know is that they're definitely using displacement mapping, but to what extent they don't say. You know, it's in the patch notes there. So I'm going to continue exploring this rather exciting and captivating game with so many different systems in it. Yeah, it's really holding my attention because I know that there's so much that I've not even delved into yet, you know, and people have been criticising the sort of lack of an overall narrative, and I don't know, I mean, I'm enjoying just rebuilding the Greymanes and discovering systems like fishing and pets and, you know, all the sort of things that you can do in this world and all the exploration. So you know, lots to do, lots to see. And next video, we'll be looking at this seawater. Its qualities, its limitations, and, you know, just looking at all the stuff that is so fascinating to me as an environment artist. And it seems to many of you as well. So I appreciate you watching. Thank you very much. And I'll see you again in another video soon. So take it easy. Bye.